Griff Hamilton for Real Men, Real Issues. And Griff is a very interesting gentleman. He comes originally from New Zealand and is now living in Thailand. He's a farmer by background, and he's been telling me about his earlier life in New Zealand, in the farming community, spending a great deal of time in nature, and is very familiar with the diverseness of agricultural practices, which you would like to see, some of which you would like to see coming back from the old days to modern day. He's been telling me he's got 4 children, which is fantastic, and he was present for the birth of all of his children. And he is very interested in female energy. Welcome. Thank you for your time here.
Thank you, Teresa. Yeah, no, it's a pleasure. Thank you for the interview. I think you know, we have some interesting things to discuss, so it should be a very worthwhile. So thank you.
Yeah, you're very welcome. So shall we kick off by just then asking you a little bit about where you're living now and how you're finding Thailand?
Sure. Yeah, no, Teresa, that's great. Like I say, I was born in New Zealand and grew up pretty much in the country with general store. My parents owned general stores, and they did various things actually. They did a lot of travel, so I ended up with 9 different primary schools, or 9 shifts of primary school. So I think I had a very good education and a lot of life experience. And the beauty, I think, for around that was I got to learn how to do a lot of things. You know, when you're learning from your parents, and learning from the businesses and the things they're doing, that's a real lot of life skills there. And I think quite often the modern education of taking children away from their parents and putting them in a school with 30 or 40 other children doesn't give them the diversity of knowledge that we need in our community. It tends to channel them all in one direction, channel them into one way of learning. But in our society, we have many different occupations, many of those children have different interests, whether it's art or music or, farming or adventure. Every child's got its own personality. So they don't necessarily get to experience that in an early age, so they don't develop that as they go through life. So yeah, I was very lucky. I had 9 different primary schools. And I never really came out with a degree in anything. I've not got no PhD, but I certainly think I could find that many people. I talked to several people, quite a few people who've got quite high education, and because I've got a diversity of my interests and my background, then I find that they soon, I find that I can usually put up a very good argument. So yeah, that was my early years in New Zealand. My parents had, like I said, general stores. We had farms. I've done pretty much every sort of farming, whether it was dairy farming. I was a herd manager for a dairy farm that had 600 cows, which was not my favorite job. But then later on, I had my own herd of about 150 cows with my wife. At the time, we grew, in my early years, we did, like with my parents, dairy farming, and then we grew strawberries, and then later on we grew maize, and then later on, when I was married, we grew tomatoes, and we won New Zealand's pretty much premier award for hydroponic cherry tomatoes. We specialised in cherry tomatoes, and so and it was recognised by the Hort Research Award for excellence in food science. Even though I didn't have a background in specifically growing tomatoes or a background in science, but it's like everything I inquire. And so basically, that probably came from my interest in permaculture. I did a course in permaculture 30 odd years ago. And so I applied those principles, you know, like using beneficial organisms around the plant roots, you know, which the beneficial organisms, like the beneficial organisms that we have in our body, if they are healthy and good, they will just keep out all the bad organisms. So, you know, natural organisms, we use bumblebees for pollinating the plants, and they want to have glass houses, you know, and we used various natural things to, you know, control the bugs and things. And so, yeah, Jace, basically that was a mixture of hydroponics and, you know, organics, you might say. So we won the Principac UB Food Award for that. And also I designed my own packaging at the time and, you know, patented that. And so we were exporting to Japan and, you know, yeah, some of the Eastern countries, some to Australia. But we held a very big niche in New Zealand for our own horticulture. So, yeah, my background was, like I say, farming. And, you know, in New Zealand, in the farming in those days, you know, sometimes the nature in the valley that I ended up in for quite a bit of my adolescence had a very high rainfall. I actually ended up living there on my own when I was quite young, from the age of about 14 till about, yeah, pretty much that's where I ended up. My parents were living other places. And so I got to experience living on my own. You know, there was you know, there were people there originally, other people there, but they moved on, and I just chose to stay. So I learned to be able to, you know, look after myself. And you know, we lived in the valley I grew up in was 25 miles from the nearest high school or nearest town, and I actually had to row a rowboat across the river every day to get to the school bus on the other side of the river. And so that was, so yeah, I got right involved with nature. The rainfall in that area was something like 120 inches of rain a year. So that, you know, sometimes through this winter time, you'd only see about 3 months of sunshine. Through the winter time, 3 months would be, you know, just cloud, and you wouldn't see any sunshine. So from a natural point of view, I really, you know, got to see nature at its best. You know, the river initially was just absolutely full of fish, absolutely full of fish. It was the top of an estuary. The fish would come in with the tide, and then they would go out and just fall, and you'd look up, you'd see a flight of 80 ducks would go over, and then that'd be followed by another flight of 80 ducks, and then the swans would be flying up into the sunset in the evening and things. So while it sounds beautiful, it was also quite harsh in respect of, you know, that amount of rainfall and that sort of thing. So I got to understand Mother Nature is not always easy, but Mother Nature is pretty honest.
Very good.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned about not having a PhD, but to me, it really feels like you have a PhD from the University of Life in a number of subjects.
Well, possibly. I probably, if I was to go and apply myself, I would be able to do something like that. But yeah, I certainly have. I've always been very interested. My father was always very interested in various things. He actually was a drover. You know, he used to drove big mobs of stock from one place to another. You know, 300 or 400 stock, and he would actually talk about using his mind to work his dogs. Or as dogs. So they'd work as a community, you know. So he was always teaching me about thought forces, about the power of the mind, and in his own shepherd sort of way. But at the same time, he was also, you know, a bit of an entrepreneur, always looking for an opportunity to, you know, he just, you know, liked to do different things. So, and that's where we end up doing the general stores, as well as that. One time he actually had a printing works, and was printing a local newspaper. So yeah, pretty varied background. From that, we went on. I tried university for a couple of years. I enjoyed the local pub. That was about it. And then, you know, moved on. Traveled to London on my big OE when I was about 25. And funnily enough, one of the girls from the valley I grew up with, she hadn't been in the valley because she'd been sent off to a boarding school. But I met her in the Cockney's Pride in Piccadilly Circus. So that turned into 4 children over 20 years.
Right.
So strangely enough, you have to travel sometimes the other side of the world to meet people from your own valley.
Very, very true. It's interesting to hear you talking about that, because you mentioned spending a lot of time on your own when you were 14.
14, 15, probably late 14, 15, 16.
Yeah.
I'd go to school and things. I'd see the parents would come out once every couple of weeks to see me and things like that. But
sure.
But I got to learn to live on my own for sure.
Yeah. A huge contrast to living in a city.
Well, definitely, very definitely. And there was a period of time we spent in Auckland. There I was in the city, but like I said, 9 different changes of primary school. You certainly learn to keep to yourself a bit when you're in the city. You certainly you find that you every time you go into a new situation, there's always you always get tested. So you learn a bit of self-reliance in that. And so that was that. And then later on I end up from there. Did you have any other questions around that?
Yeah, no, it was interesting. You said you were tested going into social situations. Can you say a bit more about that?
Well, I think probably whenever someone new comes into a community, there's always there's always other people in that community that start to sort out who you are. And quite often it's not necessarily, it's a bit of a pecking order.
Right.
So they test you a bit to see who you are, what you're doing, and consequently you end up probably in a few altercations, especially if you've got your own sort of attitude. Either you don't get much choice,
Right.
So I've learned pretty much to having boundaries, and also keep to myself pretty much and then choose who I to talk with or communicate to. So I think any child every child has, especially around those school situations I was talking about, when you get 30 children put in one room, or 600 children or 1,000 children in a school, there's always a pecking order that develops. So and that's can be quite primitive, I think. And it happens in many societies. So they don't have the community there to support them, So that was a bit of a learning situation I had from an early age.
Yeah. No, I can appreciate that, because 9 schools is a lot of schools to go to, and to learn how to get along with new people. And I guess you were socially comfortable with being able to go into new situations and make friends.
Well, I just didn't have a choice, really. It was actually a couple of those schools I went back to twice. We shifted away and came back, so there was probably 7 schools in total. So, I didn't really have a lot of choice and I didn't really know any different. And so, it was just, it was build a bit of resilience. And I think really sometimes in life, when you learn early, you don't know any different, so you just do it. When you get later in life and something changes, you start to complain. But earlier in life, if something happens, that's okay. That's just normal. And so you've just got to roll with it. And that's where I see a lot of people these days complaining about something else happening over there or there. And I'm sort of, in my situation, it's about doing something for yourself and getting out of that situation. It's not about allowing somebody else's opinions or anything else to impact, what you think, because we all have different ideas and different ways of, developing them. Like I'm now living in Thailand.
Mm.
That was a situation that, okay, I was finding, life where I was uncomfortable. So I moved, and then, and now I'm living here, and it's great. And I'm meeting some just absolutely amazing people. The people that travel seem to have a far bigger worldview. And one of the biggest things I'd encourage anybody to do that's got any difficulties is consider shifting their circumstances, getting out and having a look around.
Yeah, absolutely. Just going back to what you learned from going to so many different schools and learning, I guess, a lot of resilience as well. With the way things are so different in this century, what advice or wisdom would you share that would be helpful maybe to young persons going to school now that would be helpful to them?
Basically, I'd say follow the arts.
Right.
I would suggest follow their passions, get out and do some art, get out and do some music, learn the guitar, because the guitar is also a very social thing. Even if the person itself is not a social person, follow their photography. If they like growing plants, get out and grow their garden. Turn their whole pet house into garden plants, or that sort of thing. And basically get out and start. If they like the idea of travel, okay, start planning to travel. Depending on the age, of course, but children naturally have a bubbly personality, and it does tend to get suppressed in a society where you get top marks in your class, and then you're the winner. If you don't get top class, you're the dummy. I had one stage there, one school I went to, the teacher kept them in my same class for 2 years, and my parents went along and complained, and they said, well, he's only ever going to be a farmer anyway. And that idea, I can still remember hearing that. And then I went on to become, the farmer that won, the Print Back You Food Award for excellence, the premier farming award in New Zealand. So we are out the whole, I think that's why it would be good for children the whole education system to go back to more of a homeschooling even, or schooling. There's alternative schools that are there, the Steiner schools and those sort of things. And they don't teach the competition as that we see in the other schools, but they teach people to themselves to expand their own interests. And I don't think necessarily competition is natural in an abundant society. We are taught scarcity, where scarcity is provided by the banking system, and that rolls all the way down. And that's a whole discussion about that aspect. And anybody that's done any research into what's happening with the banking system and its method of control will realize it's not natural. It's not community. It's not sharing. It is, and then I think the rollout from the banking system is also the education system and the way we're trained to be little robots, you might say.
I can't disagree with you, but I guess when we're in our own little space, the only person we can take responsibility for is ourselves.
And others, of course. When you start to look after others, you find that you can build a community and you look after each other.
Yeah. It starts with this person.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And especially if you've got some sort of understanding of life skills and things, that you realize that you can be the catalyst for others around you to change, and then you can change also. That energy picks you up, and that's what a leader, I suppose, is about, is they step out. And some children are very much leaders.
Absolutely.
and then sometimes they also get suppressed. So encouraging, every part of the diamond, there's different facets to our whole community,
Absolutely.
and everyone's got their own place if it can be evolved. And so I do think that we've lost community. We've lost the grandmothers in our communities. They've been separated away. I think the wisdom of the grandmothers, that's in nature. Nature actually, I think humanity is the only species that has, in genetics, where the grandmother actually menopauses around the age of 45 or whatever, and then still stays there to continue to look after her children and the grandchildren and pass that wisdom on. So that's a biological thing about being human, that the wisdom of the grandmothers is there, and that should be very much respected. That caring and nurturing, I can still remember going to my grandmother's place. She would have been planning the Christmas do for 6 months before, and she would have the cakes and all the things, and the
Yes.
turkey fat and all the beef fat, and she would have been clucking around for months and months, and it would have been the highlight of her month, her year, and the grandkids and all that sort of thing. The community were there as well. So that whole thing around the grandmother is very important. I think that's what we should go back to, and there's biological benefits to that as well.
So how can men embrace that, bringing back in the feminine?
I think the thing is that men are very, just like both masculine and feminine, are very damaged at the moment, is the way I look at it. And it's because we've been coming through a period of we as a society, I think we've been infantile. We've come through that infant style. We're sort of past adolescence now, and we've actually got to take responsibility. We've got to grow up, and sort of how can men embrace that? From my point of view, I know that if the women in my life or people around me are happy, then I'm happy. And most men are also in that space. Not every man. You might have these dudes in Wall Street and stuff that have got psychopathic tendencies, but that's not every man. That's one or three, and the vast majority seem to get blamed for some of maybe 10%, but anyway, not every man. I know some beautiful men would just give their shirt away, their coat away to anybody, but they sort of get tarred with the same brush that we see in the media about the abuse and things that goes on, and not every man is like that, and so guys, when they see that, it tends to scare the heck out of them, and they hide away. They don't, because the part of the man generally is initiate. The masculine energy, the yin and the yang. The yang actually has a place to initiate, and the yin has an energy to reciprocate. But we all have the yin and yang in each of us.
Well, exactly.
And so some women actually have a lot more yang than yin. And in my case, my parents' case, my mother was actually very, she was a big, strong Irish woman.
Right.
And Dad was quite a small Scottish guy, Yeah, so basically, I had a very strong woman in my family.
Right.
And so, I couldn't see too much abuse in that situation. I did actually see her cuff him at one stage. He took up, stood up again, so he was okay. So for men, how can men embrace the feminine? The men in a state of shock. The ones I'm seeing at the moment, quite a few of them are in a state of shock. They don't know what to do. And just like the women don't know what to do, we've been as a civilization, as a race, we've been traumatized by war, and the women stay home, and or the armies come through and rape and pillage, and the men go and under the cannon fire and come home badly damaged psychologically, or they don't come home at all. So as a race, we have been both traumatized, and I do not think it's something I think it's something that was outside our understanding at the time.
Mm.
As we get an understanding of it, we'll come under control. But I do think we were treated as cannon fodder, and that is getting into a bit of the dynamic I've already spoken about.
Yeah, because one of the things that I talk to young people about is application of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
And, it'd be great to hear you saying a little bit more about how you yourself apply getting into your feminine side in your day-to-day life. Because you've mentioned you have 4 children.
That's right, yeah. There was a bit of masculine involved in that.
Yes, of course, but bringing up children, especially when they're really small, does require some feminine energy.
Definitely. Well, we were lucky because of our, I don't know if it was lucky or choice, but because of our experience, farmers and that sort of thing. And both myself and my wife had those experiences. So we actually had our own horticultural properties. So the children were brought up with us, or on the farm, on the dairy farms, the children were brought up with us. So, and both myself and my wife worked together in the job, in the businesses, whatever. Whether it was picking the tomatoes or sorting or delivering, or my wife's very good with with the finance, so she dealt with all the finance, and women tend to be better at finance than guys, I think. I believe 80% of the actual things that are spent on the planet, the money is through the women.
Okay.
Women actually control 80, whether they spend it anyway.
Yeah.
So. Bringing our family up, generally we tried initially to ensure that they had, and this wasn't necessarily a conscious or a life plan or anything. This is just sort of how it worked out. But the older ones tended to, got taught music and gymnastics and this sort of thing.
Yeah.
And because we had a certain amount of freedom around our business, one would be able to take off and deliver the children to wherever. As we got busier later on with the children, 3 and 4, they didn't quite get the same care and, training, but then they built their own resistance and resilience as well in a different way. But, definitely to allow children to experience music, art, nature, and that sort of thing, I think is important. I was just up at the swimming pool here in Thailand, where I'm in Thailand here, and there was a father there who had his 2 small children with him, and he's a Hungarian guy. He's been a National Geographic photographer. Now he's married to a lady here in Thailand, and spending all his time with his children, and they're in the pool, and one's only this high, and she's a really good swimmer. So he's out there with them, spending time with them in the pool. And I do think that there's a huge thing around touch. So it's getting a little bit away from the question you asked me.
Yeah, if I can just interrupt you, because you said to me beforehand that you were actually there for the birth of your children.
That's right. Yeah. Basically, I was there, and I just about caught the first, first couple. But
Right.
certainly was right there through the whole birth process with the children. Yes.
Yeah.
My background, I sort of understand nature a bit, and it's important, I think, to be present in that situation.
No, absolutely. So were they planned to be at home, or were they in hospital, or a combination, or?
The first one we had at home, but there was a bit of difficulty there.
Right.
And we were close to the hospital, so he ended up in the hospital. Actually, it wasn't because we actually had a very good doctor and a very good midwife with us at that time, but he was stubborn and decided to take his time, and then ended up swallowing quite a lot of meconium, and which damaged his lungs. So he was taken to the hospital. He did spend quite a few days in intensive care there, but I don't think necessarily the whole birth process would have been the same in the hospital.
Right.
And I'm not a fan of cesarean at all. From understanding the biome, understanding that in nature things are born naturally, and that whole process and of coming down the birth canal causes wakes the body up, so all the immune system kicks into gear. Then
Correct.
it gets dosed with the biome of the mother,
Correct.
all around the natural stuff,
Mhm.
and that then just builds a huge immunity for a child very early in life,
Yeah.
day one. And
Mm.
so with a cesarean, the child gets none of that that shock, which shocks are great. If we look at Wim Hof and his Iceman stuff, or some of these sort of things where you shock the system, the whole body kicks into gear, and that's what wakes you up. A lot of sick people,
Yeah.
if they got out there and shocked their system, they'd probably be a lot healthier.
Yeah. I personally meet a lot of men who are concerned about being in the labour room and how things are going to go and so on. What
Mm.
advice would you recommend that I give them?
Get in there. Yeah. I mean, you were there at the conception, then, then you're going to be there, so that, for your children for the rest of their lives, whether, and no matter what situation. So, why interrupt?
Yeah.
Yeah. Part of nature.
Is there anything, do you think, that from a man's perspective, that can prepare a guy to be in with his wife, regardless of where the birth actually occurs? Because I've known births to occur on the in the train.
Mm-hmm.
You can never tell. But is there anything that you think that can really help a guy psychologically prepare to be with his wife or girlfriend for that precious time?
I suppose, a few of them think I suppose a lot would be quite, fearful of that
Mm,
idea. And having been naturally through that whole experience of growing up in the country and the farm from a very small age, and actually watching the birth process, the blood and the various fluids that come out, that it was quite natural for me. So I don't know if there's any YouTube videos on it or something, but just get an experience, have a look around, and just look at the birth process in whatever way they can. Just get a bit used to it,
mm,
and whether the mother wants them there as well. There is some part, I suppose, some parts of society have frowned on that, to
mm,
break the man and the woman away from nature.
mm,
But we really need to enroll ourselves and get into nature, and that is a very natural and very special time, the birth process of their child.
mm,
So and that very initial connection is very important for the child, from a range of different places. The biology and the connection of the child comes out, and if it's aware and awake, then it'll be taking in energy and time and knowledge about what's going on around it very, very quickly. So it
mm,
helps to imprint
mm.
what's going on.
Yeah, and I too grew up in a farm, so I was very used to have seen animals being born as I was growing up. And I just wondered, from your perspective, is it very different observing, say, a cow giving birth to being in a room with your wife giving birth?
um, Generally, well, obviously it's a lot more hygienic in the room with the
Sure.
wife, and you've got a lot more support there. I think that being in a hospital, where a woman is giving birth, may not actually be the most natural way for a woman to give birth.
Mm,
If you look back at some of the technologies that are used in the past for women to give birth, they're on their back, and they're sort of everything's all this machinery around. Whereas really, it's probably better if they get in the bath, or if they get out
yeah,
and they
sure.
they squat. squat to give birth. Every person's got their own ideas about that. Not every person, but there is. It's certainly an area that I'd be a little bit careful about talking about, in respect that I'm not a midwife, not a doctor, but from my experience, I think natural way of giving birth, which is probably squatting, or in a such like that, rather than just being flat on their back.
So how did you experience your emotions when you were there by your wife's side as she was giving birth to your child?
Oh, certainly he was getting, got quite very emotional there at times, and there's deep concern for my wife as well. She's going through some amazing, she's going through some pain, real amazing pain. And so you do feel that concern, and, you feel emotional. You'll tear up a bit. Some guys, I believe, faint. I didn't manage to faint, but it is a life and death situation in some ways. It feels that way, and it is a situation you're there to give as much support and energy as you can to have it proceed smoothly. So it is a very climatic situation, I suppose you might say.
It is, and every experience of a birth for each individual is very, very different. One of the things I was talking to somebody about recently was the idea of laughter in the birthing room. And she said, and this particular person has 4 children. And she said to me, it never occurred to me that laughter might be an option.
That could be too. It could be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that would get all the muscles moving. It would loosen things up. People resist the pain, and so they would, laughter would start to release that, and probably release a few of the hormones. I think that probably if we looked at some of the native cultures that we've taken life and put it into a hospital, or we've taken control of it, but in the native cultures, there'd be some birthing processes there that would be quite natural. I have not investigated into anything at all, but it's been going on for 6 million years in nature, and so we turn around and decide we'll put them in a hospital room. I think we may have other places that we could look for options there around the birth process. I mean, the first child that we had was quite a long labour. 10 hours or something like that. But the other ones came through quite quickly. In fact, we just about had one in the car, one of the last ones.
So did you deliver the last one by yourself?
No, it was just about in the car. We got to the hospital just in time, basically. And we were travelling, and suddenly she came into labour, and we were 2 hours from the hospital, so we went straight there, and basically it happened straight away when she got there. So that was one of the easy ones. So so yeah, and so they're all growing up now.
Absolutely fantastic. And do you think being at the birth made any difference, or to how you bonded with your children, and how you were with them as a dad for the rest of their life, well, until they're adults?
Well, I never really thought about that, but certainly, just the feeling I get right now is that yes, it certainly is a special bonding time. It's indelibly stamped in your brain. Actually, having a child come out, the first child actually came out purple because of the difficulties, and there was immediate, and I sort of didn't know any different. I was holding this purple child, and then the doctors came in, and the doctor was there, like I said, and things moved quite quickly because he had swallowed meconium. But yes, so, and then the other ones came out fine. So certainly it's a special time.
So were you one of these dads that changed nappies?
I did. I got into trouble a couple of times when One day I was changing nappies on the floor in the front of the sliding door, and my boss walks up. I was working with this character, and he was totally shocked. I don't think I ever really fitted back into his idea of being a man after that.
Right. Was it because you were changing the nappy, or were you doing it?
I think it's because he saw me changing nappies. He didn't think I should be changing nappies. I didn't do a lot. I mean, yeah, I did enough of it. You know, like I said, we were working together in our farming and various things. So there was a job to be done. You know, I'd either cook the dinner or go out and pick the fruit or do the
Sure.
tractor work, and then we just mix and mingle. You know, we both had reasonable background in various, you know, all sorts of life skills. So it was quite changeable. There was no set, you know, the roles developed naturally. It wasn't as if it was a set roles.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. There's some roles only women can do and some roles only men can do. You know, and breastfeeding is one of the ones only women can do. What was it like for you seeing your, I don't know, did your wife breastfeed?
Yeah, sure. It was just, I don't actually think it was anything unusual at all about it. It was just, you know, there was just what happened. You know, I was breastfed fed, and I think that's why boys like boobs. You know,
Right, right.
it's
Well,
very good anchoring.
it is. Well, not every man of certain generations were breastfed because, if I remember rightly, in the 50s and 60s there was a lot of push to actually have babies bottle fed. In this, certainly in Europe, there was a lot of that. So there are men who are in their 60s, 50s, 40s who were not breastfed.
Definitely, yeah, definitely, and that's another whole subject I could discuss at some other stage.
Yeah.
It really comes back to this, you know, if we go back in history, it's a separation of humanity from nature, the
Correct.
human being, and that comes under the guise of civilization. So, you know, I'll try and put that aside because it is a big subject. But yeah, definitely the Western European man has been taken away from that connection with the mother. I see here in Thailand that the people are very supposedly poor, and the children are wrapped around their mother, you know, till the age of 3 or 4. And I'm thinking, how fortunate are they compared to the Western families where the child is taken away and put in a separate room or put in a incubator and fed a bottle. You know, we wonder why men are, you know, supposedly aggressive or are detached, because they've never really learned how to touch. They have never learned that relaxation about just being with a woman, and just feeling, you know, it's the first 3 or 4 years of breastfeeding or of being with the mother, I think is an incredibly important bonding time that has been taken away by our culture from the men of the West. And that follows on then to the warfare and stuff like that they're subjected to as cannon fodder.
Mm. Mm.
You
It's,
know.
you know, I saw you become very emotional when you were actually telling me about your children being born.
Yeah, well, I don't cry. I just leak sometimes.
I know that, and because one of the things I often hear is that men are no good at sharing their emotions, and yet I actually saw you, like you say, little droplets
Yeah,
coming
just
down.
that leak. Sometimes I
Yeah,
leak. Oh, certainly,
yeah.
I certainly feel connected yeah, you know, they are part of my life. They're part of me, it's you know, it's something, you know. Actually, one stage I was told not to cry by my mother.
Right.
And so there has been situations in life where I've really wanted to get that release out, but I haven't. I've even gone off to sort of find a quiet spot, and I just haven't been able to release that. I tend to be getting a bit, I'm more free with it as I get older now, and especially with what I'm understanding about life. But you know, it's certainly it seems to be for me personally, there is a fine line between a guy going all out and becoming, you know, being a blubberpuss and a guy showing a bit of emotion at the right time. We don't live in a the society, or just nature itself has a bit of a role for guys, and that tends to be the strong one that stands up in a situation of threat or pain, or that is if we look at the Stoic or the Gnostic, the Stoic things, the woman's got a place of nurturing, of looking after the family. The guy's got a place of protecting the family. He can't do a lot of the things. We are not. That's why I think we are not equal. I don't think men and women are equal. We're complementary. We're not equal. Because that's an irrelevant term. It's like putting a man and a woman in a boxing ring. Okay, she's equal. He's equal. Okay, and we've got a society at the moment that's got that strong. It's the society. Like I say, it's not actually the people. It's some system from outside, which is dictating this very aggressive, supposedly masculine. But I would disagree with that, because I know so many big-hearted men out there that are amazing. So I wouldn't agree with that.
You mentioned a big-hearted man earlier, Wim Hof, nicknamed the Iceman.
Well, I was really speaking about Wim as much as being he can handle stress. He puts himself in a situation where his actual physiology is subjected to stress, and his mind also. I wasn't really referring to Wim as a big-hearted, because I actually don't know him personally.
No, I don't either, but there is something quite personable and quite gentle about him. And as far as I understand, because he had to bring up 4 children after his first wife passed away, and the youngest at that point was 2. And he's now got his older children, I think it's his 3 older children, actually working for him and with him. And I think that says something positive about him, because in this day and age, if you're not too happy with your parents, there's always the option of moving to another country. You wouldn't necessarily go and work with them.
That's right.
So I think there's something quite complimentary about him that actually happens. But one of the other things his mission in life is seeing people happy. Right. And I think happiness is, and joy, pleasure, contentment are also part of the emotional spectrum. Do you think men experience those things, those emotions, and are they happy to share those emotions?
Well, yeah, I think if we look at Wim as a good example, he also has his aims and his things he takes on as personal challenges, which he then feels successful and achieves. So his happiness is also out of his, the natural achieving things in his life, things that he wants to do. So for men in our society, I think it's a place that they need to sort of follow something, some of their passions as well, and have challenges. It's not just all about feeling happy and sitting on the couch and having a beer. There's responsibilities, there's things that make them feel like men, and that's why I see a society where we're supposedly in the future going to be on a benefit system worldwide as being not good, because it doesn't provide a few challenges that men have to get up to sometimes and wake up and take on. What makes a character quite often is the hard times. So yeah, I think we need to have purpose. We need to have goals, and just work. We've got this situation at the moment where we're trying to, society and technology has decried work, and yet, I look at my little village here, and the people are only too happy when they've got something to do. The ladies who've got their food stalls out, and the men are off down cleaning the street or something. But if they didn't have anything to do and they're all sitting there around moaning at each other, that wouldn't be any fun. But that gives them a sense of purpose. I think a sense of purpose is around that. And it's that's where I'd sort of come back to things like permaculture or home, or music, or doing something themselves and coming back into community. Because in communities, everybody's got a different role. We've got natural things to do.
Yeah. So listen, coming back to you, how do you experience pleasure?
How do I experience pleasure? I tend to find quite often having a challenge. And then afterwards, then I can relax and have a beer or a wine or whatever. I recently went off and started to learn dancing again.
Very nice.
And so and then I've done a reasonable amount of yoga over time. So I find that I get pleasure out of accomplishment. And so and even doing what we're doing this sort of thing is connecting with people. I find that is really great to wake up to, and just growing the community around me. So for pleasure, really, when you've got pretty much nothing else to go for, as an older guy, and I think many older guys are like this, they really have everything they need. They're pretty self-reliant and self-capable. They get pleasure out of giving to others. That fills them up, and we've got a bit of a division in the society at the moment. So they are not felt that they are appreciated. But yeah, for myself, it's about really giving back to others, and also a few of my own accomplishments that are around, always moving forward. Like living here in Thailand, I'm mixing with the internet community, the young people. So, there's a 30-year age gap there. But, they take me under their wing, and, I sort of take them under my wing. They're teaching me about technology and cryptocurrencies and things, and I'm teaching them about health and herbs and, a bit of that sort of thing. So that's what a community is about. And, like I say, a lot of older guys would love to give back if they were in the right, if they were appreciated.
Yeah. Yeah, and it makes sense that the older person shares the wisdom of the life that they've had with a younger person, and like you say, in this day and age, our youngsters can teach us a lot in terms of technology, because I'm guessing growing up, like myself, and the iPad wasn't available to you.
That's right. No, I didn't have a telephone till I think it was 13 or 14, and we had a party line, and first TV was about the age of 16 or 17, and then it only went for 4 hours.
Wow.
So it was black and white. So I didn't have that training that the children have had nowadays. The dopamine dose that gets them addicted. My interests, like I say, my interests are somewhat cosmological as well, or an interest in the Mayan calendar and that sort of thing. And from that gives me a bit of philosophy around the fact that we are evolving. And so it's not just about being what I'm doing, it's about what is evolving around me. And I think the children that are now on the planet have come through at a different time, and they've got more opportunity, more potential, which is different to what my potential was. And I'm meeting so many amazing, generous kids just want to give back. They don't want the finances. They don't want what they see is in the world around them that is really, they see as just totally destructive. Or not totally destructive. They certainly seek to have funds and money and things, but there's certainly a big majority of them just have money. Money is just basically a means to actually enjoy themselves, either travel or do things for other people and create community. And I'm just really impressed with the young people that I'm seeing these days coming through.
Yeah, well, that's actually lovely to hear, really, because young people don't always get a good rap. Mind you, that's always been the case. one of the things that some youngsters have talked to me about is that kind of, and you've mentioned it, is that dopamine thing. And they
Mm-hmm.
don't always know how to really get into a deep state of calmness and relaxation. Because as I say to a lot of people, it's not really possible to be totally calm and peaceful and relaxed and tranquil within, in the body, in the same moment, as to be hyper or even to be anxious. And if we were to teach them how to be a lot more calm, a lot more peaceful, a lot more calm within, I'm guessing they will be able to deal with an awful lot more of the things that they have to deal with in an awful lot more effective way. What would be your recommendation to, or what would you teach a young person that they can do in order to be more calm, more peaceful, more tranquil within in any given moment?
Right. Well, I'm sort of looking at setting up a personalized health plan for people here.
Right.
That's when I'm attending a cryptocurrency conference in about 2 weeks. And
All right.
so I can see a lot of those technology kids just haven't got understanding of all the other things when it comes to. So I, from what I'm looking at and what I'm seeing and experiencing, I'm thinking that we need to come back to birth, really. We need to look at the process of a child from the basically from the date of birth, whether they had a natural birth, whether they had a cesarean, whether they, whether their biome was built, their stomach, their microorganisms were built on day one, because those are the ones that really start looking after them and improving their just their whole strength of the system, and then carrying on from there to, their psychological background and their vaccinations, and and it's right. It's not just sitting them down here and now and saying, well, about meditating or whatever. I've been doing Vipassana off and on for 30 years, so Vipassana meditation, and then the mind can still spin. So really, I'm going back to what's happening in the body, and the health, their immune system, and then what is triggering the dopamine, and so I've done a lot of research into that whole thing, yeah, I think I think we really need to look back at the food we're eating, and then how we're building on that, and then the physical exercise that goes with it. And I'm very much interested in herbs. I think we should get back into Mother Nature's plant, basically communicating with herbs. I think we ever hear about ayahuasca and marijuana and things like that, as being spirit plants, but we are 90% plants ourselves. So partaking of good, fresh, and very potent herbs. I'm just amazed at the herbs that I'm meeting here in Thailand that are, they're superfoods, and they stimulate the body in the way it should be stimulated. So there's a whole big thing in there. I don't think for me personally, it's not an easy thing to just sit, find some kid that's just had, 30 years of Facebook, or 30 years of crisps and stuff from the local corner store, or stuck in a situation where he's been in television, or he's been brought up in a situation where he hasn't had his contact with his mother. There's a bit of dynamics that go between all those, and it's actually quite surprising to me some of these kids are actually still standing. If we put all those things together and compare them to what happens to a kid in a natural environment, a community, nurtured by its mother, so it gets 3 or 4 years of contact, learning how to connect with the feminine, and then their body's fine. They're allowed to express their various gifts. We'd have a totally different, 25 or 30-year-old, as opposed to the plastic society they've been brought up in. So yeah, I think there's huge potential to, and the human body is able to respond and come back really quickly, and especially being a man, I'd like to have, I like to know what's going on. How does this work? I like to have the intellectual side of it. So you know, if we can understand it. And, you know, I am pretty unimpressed to see so much research is actually suppressed.
Yeah.
And so there is so much amazing research out there that they suppress that lot, and somebody else comes along and does it again and again and again and again, and it keeps these scientists busy. But if that information was actually available to people, so we didn't have to repeat ourselves, then you know, we'd save a lot of money in that respect. You know. So yeah, you know, I think there is a huge potential there. I am, you know, a big on really nurturing the feminine in myself and other people. I personally, as you see, I can tear up a little bit.
And that's okay.
Good. So, you know, yeah, I'm, like I spoke about the grandmother and things, I am looking at the potential of how to create a system. You know, like I say, I don't think there's a financial system on the planet at the moment that suits the feminine. I think the masculine and the feminine are different. They think differently. That's why I make the statement, I don't think they're equal. I think that's just a game that was used to actually mislead them both into the voting booth. You know, the voting booth was really, you know, who controls the voting booth anyway? Now we realize, you know, it's controlled by the same people who put the media out. I've actually got a book here on feminine frequencies. It was written about the Nazi era and the way they used radio to manipulate the German woman at that time. And it's a book written by a woman. So, you know, yeah, you know, I think we're complementary. I think we've got jobs to do ourselves. I actually think women are more powerful than men. And you get them in a community. You get a few women together, and if you've done something wrong, you're in big trouble. Yeah, I'm 60 odd years old. I've figured out it's best to be not to do that. So. Okay. So yeah, no, the woman's powerful. Mother Nature is powerful. I'm not a man that's into an off-world male god. I'm a man that's into an on-world feminine energy. You know, Gaia Sapphire, and you know, that whole creational energy coming from the country and the farm. I've seen all that creational power. You know, where's the man in that situation? He might be there for a minute, but he's you know, and so yeah. So that's pretty much where I'm coming from with that.
Very good. And my last question is, what is the best thing for you, for yourself, being a man?
What is the best thing for myself being a man? I think being in community. Being in community, and you know, certainly getting to the age that I am now, I'm realizing that, you know, it's nice to be respected. I also realize is, you know, being in a community and having that understanding with an understanding group of people around me, you know, you're getting to pretty much a situation where you all understand each other. So that's, yeah, you know, we like a challenge as men as well. We like to think about things. So yeah, you know, I think it's a bit tough out there for a few of the guys. So, you know, so yeah, men with issues. It's certainly an area, you know, I was concerned. So anyway, there's certainly things there that need to be dealt with for understanding what men are about.
All right, listen, Griff, thank you very much for your time.
That's fine, Teresa. Thank you for your time, and thank you for the good questions. You know, it's an important discussion to be had.
Yeah, no, you're most welcome. And I think there's a lot of people in the world that would be interested in what you have to say. And I wish we had all day, but, you know, I do appreciate that every good thing also passes. All right.
Okay,
Thank you for your time. All right.
Thank you, Teresa.
Thank you.
Thank you.